where we can discuss the issue of internet rights, which is core to the programming that we do under my portfolio, which is media rights and access at the Ford Foundation. Some of our partners are here, from CIS, from SEMCA, etc., and it's lovely to be in this conversation. I think based on what I've heard so far and the topic of the particular panel, whether internet rights should fall under the human rights framework, whether internet rights should we as Indians who are or people involved in the internet space in India, should we be advocating for internet rights to be considered among the human rights? And I think that's the narrow agenda of this particular consultation. So I want to say that from the cautionary perspectives that we've heard are well taken. Should we not define what we mean by transparency, what we mean by privacy, what we mean by, substantially public interest uses of the internet, how it's participatory, how it's, free? Should we not first address regulations for that before we talk about internet as a fundamental right? So that's been one perspective from the panels so far. The other perspective is, and I think Jagdish brought that up in the panel earlier, we should just have accessibility to all, as is also spelled out in the kind of, in our telecom policy. Universal access is something that India is a signatory to. So first we should have universal access. So I think these are two different wings of the argument, and I don't think that one can be without the other. So I think that we typically do hear a lot of the cautionary and well-placed debates on the control of the internet and all the censorship on the content and how to do away with that before we talk about internet for the poor. But I think one of the problems is speaking on behalf of the poor. And I think this is something that we all need to face. I mean, are we going to stop using the internet today and say, let's wait for the regulation regime to sort itself out before we engage in our commercial practices on the internet? If not, I don't think that we can prioritize that over this. I think they do have to go together simultaneously. As far as the issue of having said that, so I think universal access that already exists as a principle, as a guideline, as a framework within our policy structure is what we can hold on to when we talk about making, whether it's the corporate sector, the social sector, or the government, accountable for providing internet to all. And I think that's the framework that I think has been very, very useful. A second, of course, framework is the freedom of expression, Article 19. We talk about right to information, and we talk about why it's important that, in order to make a public service delivery more accessible and more effective in terms of health or education, we need an accountability in governance. All those are very important developmental goals and important goals to our being today. But also expression and communication are very important parts of our social being. So together with the economic, and I want to emphasize that freedom of expression, also we work on looking at the legal framework under which we can also include the internet. So freedom of expression, right to information, and if we do that, I don't think that we can I would personally, in that sense, and based on a lot of discussions with partners, think that internet rights, talking about the internet as a technology, I think is less useful than talking about the values which we want to promote. So if we want to promote freedom of expression, whether it's on any platform, I think that's important. Whether we want to, promote right to communication, not only the right to keep speaking and babbling, but also the right to be heard. So right to communication, this is also in the UN Charter, and the right to information. All these are aspects of knowledge that already are acknowledged as rights. And I think rather than choosing internet over other technologies, we can ensconce internet within that. At the same time, be very clear that we're also talking about universal access. That's part of our telecom policy. So I think these are some of the ways forward. One of the problems that we also find in making this decision, I think, whether internet should be a human right, is that we need to have far more conversations about that with different types of people. It cannot be closed door, closed policy. And I think that's been the problem with our policy kind of and regulatory environment, where we have very few people discussing about the regulation of the internet, and these people are wonderful and dedicated. But it just continues to be that. So how do we get more grassroots leadership? And Aruna Roy talked about the movement that was RTI. I'm not saying that right to internet or internet access is necessarily going to have that movement capacity. Yet nonetheless, to make it truly participatory, how do we build policy leadership among grassroots groups, and what would that take? So I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll be happy to engage further.